Yes, so we had met with APD Forward a few weeks ago now, and just are beginning to think about what it would look like to analyze APD visual practices, or what the outcomes are of APD's policing and whether visual yeah, we'd like to really know what to look for.
Hi, thank you for inviting me as well. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak with all of you. So I'm heading up our Civil Rights Office. It relates directly to our Human Rights Ordinance. The City of Albuquerque has a Human Rights Ordinance that has three main components. They relate to housing, employment, and ADA related issues. We are working right now, I've been here about 90 days, so I'm working to connect with the community and make sure everyone is aware that I'm here, and then starting to help our citizens with their issues in those areas.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes.
I'm sorry, ma'am. How many people in your office?
Right now, there are 2 of us. I am hiring another attorney soon, and then we work directly with Michelle's office, which brings us about 10 people.
So let me also just say thank you all for coming and coming on such short notice. You know, the mayor wanted someone to meet as quickly as possible, but his schedule as well as Chief Steyer's schedules are really difficult to find time in. But my schedule and Deputy Chief Medina's, we were able to move stuff around and be here sooner, and he thought that that was the priority. So that's why we're here now. He is always certainly willing to meet with anybody, members of the community, especially about issues that are important. So it's just a matter of scheduling and timing. We wanted to get this done sooner rather than later, and then we can work with the office to get some other time if that's what folks in the room desire. And so I'm Sarita Nair, Chief Administrative Officer for the city. And you want to go around and do introductions? Sure. Please go see you.
Arthur Bell.
Stephanie Nelson.
Monica Stevens, and I'm with Save the Kids.
My name is Justin Allen.
Diane McCann. Kelly Travis.
Justin Rogers.
Bob David.
Nita Herschel.
Eric Shimamoto.
Celinda Guerrero.
Baron Jones.
Joe Trujillo, I'm from Democratic Socialists in America.
Court Phelps.
Deborah Blanton.
Barbara Robles. I'm Patty Brown.
Angie Martin.
I'm Gilbert Gagos. I'm the Communications Director at APD.
Vernon Butler.
I'm Tom Dunn. I'm in the Southeast area at CPC.
Harold Medina, Deputy Chief of Police.
Alan Armijo, Director of Constituent Services.
So first we have a couple of questions before we get into our concerns, but we understand that there were 3 positions hired at APD, and they were higher level positions. Have those people started yet? Have they started work?
Not sure what you mean by 3 positions, but we hired Damon Martinez as a policy advisor to the chief, and he started work on last Monday. And then we have made an offer to Leonard Nabursky, I get his last name wrong sometimes, as to head up the real-time crime center. So that's a civilian position as well, and he is scheduled to start next Monday.
And these are permanent classified positions?
No, they are unclassified positions.
So they are political appointees?
They are unclassified positions. So the way that the city's workforce, because everybody, I won't repeat it if everybody knows it, but the way the city's workforce is structured, there are some people who are in what are called classified positions, and they basically are not at-will employees. Like everybody who works in the private sector is usually an at-will employee. So unclassified positions are at-will.
Mm-hmm. And I also understand, I have a background in human resources with the city of Albuquerque, so unclassified positions often are political appointed positions. Did you have a hiring process for these positions? Did you collect applications and do interviews?
So for the real-time crime center position, there was an extensive search. It was nationwide, and that's how we ended up with Mr. Nabursky. For the policy chief, we didn't do an ad hoc search, but you know, it's October 2018. So we've been looking informally for quite a while for someone who could fill the position that is needed. But we also needed some time in office to understand where we needed more help at the top. I'm happy to talk about what that position will do.
And so one of them did have a hiring process. Did you do background screenings for that position?
Yes.
So you were aware of his background when you hired him?
So Mr. Naversky has a lengthy career in public service and with the New Jersey State Police. He headed up their first sort of equivalent of the Real-Time Crime Center, and then he helped to create those across the state. He's done some really amazing work with data analytics and those kinds of things that we really need in APD. We were also aware that he had some accusations against him 22 years ago, and those had been resolved in his favor by the New Jersey State Police folks who did the investigation, and as many police officers do. So,
but the civil proceedings, and there were civil proceedings where
this case, along with a number of others, were brought in. I don't know if class action is technically the right term, but they were lumped together as issues related to the Turnpike, New Jersey Turnpike, and racial profiling, and his was among those, and they all settled out without ever having like a full trial on the facts then.
But part of his practices contributed to them getting to that point. I mean, it reinforced.
The internal affairs investigation found that
there weren't any other qualified candidates nationally that didn't have that in their background.
That's a weird question. I mean,
I just feel like
he was a highly qualified. He was by far the most highly qualified candidate.
I know that from being in city government hiring practices for a very long time, that often city HR would screen out people for arrests, which is that's even illegal against statute. I tried to write background policies back then, but I know how city government works in its hiring processes, and I know that background screenings like that, when those things pop up, that it's very easy for you to say you're not the best candidate for this position at this time. So it's really troubling, I think, for the community, especially communities of color, to know that somebody is coming into a leadership position and you're standing by his credentials, to think that there's no other credentialed people out there that don't have this racial allegation in their background, that these things didn't exist for them. It just seems to me that there should have been some other qualified candidate that existed who didn't have this in their background. And I just think it would be really interesting, like, the transparency of that hiring process. How did the other candidates match up? Because to me, that's something that as somebody who would be going through that hiring process, I would be marking him down for, especially considering many people in this room worked really hard over these years to bring the DOJ here. And so for us, these two hires, I mean, last week, the way I described it was as a gut punch. I felt like I had been punched in the stomach hard by Tim Keller. People in this room worked really hard for him. And this is talking about the New Jersey guy, right? You had a hiring process. You gathered qualified candidates. You did an interview process of people who qualified for the position. It's just really troubling to think that this is where you landed. And who was on that hiring panel? And I think for me as a community member, when I see things like this, the first thing I think about is political cronyism. I wonder, where is he tied to? Who is he affiliated with, and where did the money come from? Did he contribute to Tim's campaign, or did he where did this come from? Because there's always ties when you really dig in. Because to me, obviously there were other qualified candidates if you did a hiring process. So there were people who could do that job who didn't have this in their background.
And just to piggyback off of what you said that he didn't have any, I guess, wrongful doing. Like New Jersey did a background check and they said that he didn't have any wrongful doing. In order for a police department to police themselves and do an investigation on themselves, to me, it automatically makes it uncredible, because they're obviously going to favor the interests of their own employees.
And we've seen that time and time again. We can't even convict officers that are shooting unarmed civilians in the back,
and one more
that are
thing.
live streamed on social media. So we're Black Lives Matter as well here. That is one of our organizations, and we understand what this means to our community, to have people so dangerous in leadership positions, and especially at a department that is already troubled. And we haven't even, this is just the New Jersey guy. We can talk about Damon Martinez.
And before we get off the New Jersey guy, they settled out of court for $775,000. Even though he didn't admit to doing anything wrong, the fact that they settled says they did something wrong.
There were liabilities.
May I respond? So I hear you, and I just feel like there's some factual things I'd like to clarify. The transparency, like anyone can request, you can request right now if you'd like to see all the resumes or whatever. That's all, you don't have to do a formal labor request. You can just let Gilbert know who to send it to, and we can do it that way. We can log it in, whatever. So those things are always completely transparent. The other, interestingly enough, so the settlement was for the group of cases, not for just this one related to this gentleman. The fact that he had been in a department that successfully went through reform, we actually considered to be a positive thing for Mr. Napersky. He went through the reform process. He didn't leave because he hated culture change. He didn't resist. He was part of the change that department went through, which is why one of the members of our monitoring team, had said, that's a good pickup, because we actually think there's a lot of value to bringing in people who have gone all the way through reform and come out the other side a better, stronger officer. And when he gets here, he'd be happy to sit down and talk with everybody here or whoever about what he learned in that process. I understand, I've been on the outside and had sort of my own theories about when money was influencing politics. Obviously, Tim was publicly financed, so there were no contributors, but really there was no connection. We felt just incredibly fortunate that we got anybody nationally. It's a not great paying position for the spectrum of these positions. Like nationally, when you have this sort of background, you can kind of make a lot of money. He just happened to have enough of a connection to New Mexico that he was willing to take a huge pay cut and come here to do this work because he wanted to build the relationship with the community. I mean, there's no reason for you to believe anything I'm saying here, and you'll hopefully give him a chance and meet him himself, and you can ask him all of these questions and more. But he is really excited to do exactly the work that I think you would maybe think he wouldn't want to do, which is he wants to build relationships to the community. Even though his position is not sworn, he won't have a badge, he won't have a gun, he still wants to engage in some of those processes and build the relationships and work on community policing. That's where his heart is, but you're going to have to wait and meet him to see, and I think there's a gentleman over there.
So, all that's fine and well. Tell me exactly what happens when oops happens. What is the community's recourse? Okay.
Oops.
Recourse, this person that you're saying, oh, it's really,
Really, he's going to be okay.
Okay, so what happens if he reverts back to his former self? What recourse?
Work, but again, the allegations were not founded as far as their internal investigation.
They settled. They were founded.
Yeah, I mean,
the entire class settled, and
right.
That just
there
means
part of it
everybody was wrong at one point.
I mean,
instead of
and
taking
he
it to
will not
court.
deny that the department as a whole had issues with racial profiling. That's well demonstrated, and that's the root of the settlement.
And that's our problem, though, because he's heading our department. What's stopping him
already
from doing
He's
having
not
that?
heading our department.
Well,
He's heading the data center. He's not sworn.
Which
He's not going
is
to
a
have
really
the gun.
dangerous thing. I mean, we have really a lot of concerns over the data center and the cameras
Understood.
and the things that are happening with the data center.
Understood.
And so you're going to bring somebody with a troubled background into a troubled thing for the community. You're just layering it on. And I do want to have enough time to talk about Damon Martinez.
Okay.
Damon, you can
Can I
address
just finish addressing his question? So, you asked about oops. I mean, the reason that he is not in a classified position, and the reason that we actually took this position and made it unclassified, was because we understand that it's an important position and that we have to be able to get rid of the person who's in there. We can't have them tenured and vested. So yes, if there are problems with any exempt employee, that is our responsibility to, you know, remove them from that position. I mean, I think that's just how it works, and that's why we have him in an unclassified position.
So now that you have a good portion of the community out here representing all socioeconomic status, race, gender identity, etc., and you hear that they have this strong concern towards this individual, based on some very clear and well documented information, is the mayor going to be proactive rather than reactive and require that these individuals, both Damon Martinez and the man that we're speaking about, to go to anti-racism trainings to make sure that they are held accountable at the community level, working with community organizers preemptively, so that it's not just when they mess up that the community has to clean it up?
Yeah, I mean, I'm here to listen, and I think that that's one of the ideas that we've already talked about, in terms of anti-racism training. I think Michelle's working on that for actually a much broader subset of the city workforce. But yes, I mean, we are here to sort of hear your concerns as well as to hear your ideas. So absolutely, yeah.
Well, you had said that so that we can get rid of if there's a problem, the person in that position to sweep.
So as the chief administrative officer, I'm in charge of just the hiring and firing for the city. So
we know who to blame.
That's right.
Okay. So now,
great power comes great responsibility.
Indeed.
So what would be the chances that Tim would consider listening to this room? Like we said, we have good representation from all parts of the community here in this room today, who took time and a 2 hours notice to show up here, because this was so important. And how can we stop this hire and look at the other qualified candidates, and maybe you could work with the community to bring in somebody who does not have this troubled past? Is that something that Tim would be willing to entertain?
I'm here to listen and hear about, you know, what exactly is the concern. Now, like, I'm also here to communicate, though, that, you know, we have thought about these things. It was 22 years ago. He's had a spotless record ever since then. So I'm also here to push back a little bit. But, you know, if that is the request that's coming from the community, we'll certainly discuss it. And as I said at the beginning of the meeting, Mayor is more than happy to meet with you. It's just a scheduling and timing issue, and you know, you're getting, you know, the second best thing, sometimes a distant second, but you are getting, you know, the top, I also made myself available on 2 hours notice. So for what it's worth, like, this is a high priority for us, is listening to this room.
We do appreciate it, but at the same time, it doesn't matter how many years it was. Bill Cosby was just arrested, and it was how many years? So the time limit of what he did has nothing to do with what we're talking about.
And I hear that, but at the same time, like, as you said, a lot of the people in this room were responsible for bringing in the Department of Justice, because at some level you must believe that reform is possible. And so to me, the value of him having been through that reform and become a better officer through it, maybe it's meaningless to you. It has meaning to me, though.
It's not that it's meaningless. I don't see what you see. So the fact that you're telling me that he's grown and he's done this and he's done that, I only read what's on the record, and it doesn't necessarily say that he's grown and he understands that racial profiling isn't good.
And in fact, you know, one of the articles I was just reading today had to do with his role, his positive role in one of the, I should have brought the article, but there was an FBI agent who had white supremacist ties, and Leonard actually was part of testifying against that gentleman and getting him out of that position. So I'd be happy to
circulate. A black man that just came out against the feds, who was a Fed, just got arrested for exactly the same thing. So, I mean, like, we know that the federal, and that's what, well, so that leads us right into the Damon Martinez discussion, you know.
I don't know if this person wanted to have something.
Could see his record.
Yeah.
It's public, I believe.
Whatever's there that we can share, Gilbert, will you share it? Make sure that Gilbert has yours.
And I mean, not just his record. I'd like to see the actual classes he was enrolled in for reform. I want to see the actual training he took for the reforms. I want to see the steps he took in his position, because you can't just say, well, he was in a place that got reformed. Well, that doesn't tell me he got reformed. I wanna see what steps he took to reform himself.
Let's see what we can get in terms of, so like the New Jersey, no, this is more than you care about, but like some of these records we actually have to, somebody has to go to New Jersey and look through the file. It's just like any other like personal record, so let us see what we can furnish in that respect. And
So did you do that?
Yeah, you guys should have
Did
him,
somebody
right?
review his record?
I'll go to New Jersey. I
Yeah.
have relatives there.
So serious now, y'all
That
playing.
should have been
Serious.
part of
I mean,
the hiring
we're
process.
ready to go. I mean,
Let's go.
we really
I
have
just-
something to laugh about.
I just don't understand why the city and the state continually hire problematic people and not do. I mean, there has to be a pool of people who are not problematic and doing a complete background check. It just doesn't. It doesn't. I don't understand why the city has to argue for two people who the community does not want in their community doing work that's supposed to involve the community. I just don't understand why you can't say, look, you're right, we didn't, fully realize this, or we didn't do all the background we need, let's start fresh and find somebody that is, from a community that doesn't have these issues. Why try to cover them up or paint them as a long time ago or not really important?
Well, let me
This
just
doesn't
say,
make physical sense.
I mean, I
because
hear
we
you,
end
but
up
I don't feel
paying
like
these
we've
people
covered
off to
anything up.
leave.
I mean, yeah.
Damon Martinez is a problem. It is
Yes.
recent,
Yes.
it is
Let's
in
talk
our
about it.
community.
Yep.
I'm gonna say Celinda single-handedly started the campaign that prevented him from being our nominee to Congress over the issues that we are talking about here today.
And we
We
chose by our vote not to
Yes.
have him represented.
And he
your
was
office overruled
leading, massively leading in the polls when this started. We shut him down. We do not want him representing us in Congress or in the city administration. It is
We're not fishing a barrel.
outrageous that he has been hired.
He
for this
called
job.
our community fish in a barrel.
Yeah.
There's
Afraid of
no
his own
excuse for
community.
it.
It's disgusting.
So I would,
Over here. Hi, you
We're not
made
gonna
it.
be quiet about it. This will
Yeah.
not
You
be
know
the
what?
last that you've heard.
There's
of the
chairs back here.
over this hire.
So talking about Damon, I mean, one thing that Tim said to me yesterday when I spoke with him at the Ciclavia event, and he said, Celinda, I know about what Damon did. I was even one of the people who spoke out against what he did. I understand what the federal sting operation was, and I didn't want to get confrontational with him because there were lots of public around, and I didn't want to get into a debate with Tim on the spot. I wanted this meeting so that all of the voices could come. I didn't want it to just be my voice. But that was shocking to me because many of us had conversations about, is he just naive? Does he not understand the complexity and how deeply hurt the community was, the trauma that Damon brought to us?
Right.
Does he not know? But he admitted yesterday that he did know and that he was even offended by it. So why would he bring him here?
And actually, I was there right next to you. He did not say he knew what Damon did. He said he
Spoke
knew,
out.
He knew that what the ATF did
Right.
at the time, and that he spoke out against the ATF. And what he explained to you at the time was that because of Damon's position, he had to own that.
He
didn't say anything about Damon.
But that's not what he said. He did not use the words ATF. But let's just go ahead and clarify that though, in case you don't know. Damon is the person from the feds who went and asked the Department of Justice for that sting operation to come to Albuquerque. He brought them here, also knowing that other cities had complaints about racial profiling and racial policing through this sting operation. He knew it was a problematic sting. He knew it was going to target black and brown people, and that's why he brought it here. And when he brought it here, the very first CI contact that he sent to our community, Damon, I have the discovery. I'm working with the people behind the walls who were targets of this operation. They are my friends and family in our community. We have relationship with them. We were there while they were being targeted. The very first CI contact was sent to Juneteenth in 2016. Tell me that wasn't racially motivated. He told them, go to Juneteenth and manufacture crime in this community and make arrests. I mean, how can we ever trust somebody like that to lead an APD of all places?
And policy of all things.
Right. He preyed
He
on
is
his
dangerous.
own community. Yes. It's disgusting.
And then touted about arresting the worst of the worst. He arrested the most vulnerable people in the community. He arrested homeless people, drug addicted people, formerly incarcerated people. The people who Tim on his campaign said he was going to reach out to and help, that he was going to build community policing so that those people could receive services and assistance. This is completely the opposite of that. Tim went out and hired the worst of the worst.
He sure did, that's it.
Bingo.
How did his name come to your...
just drop it on us.
How did his name come to your, to be part of, candidates that, for this, position?
Because you said it wasn't an advertised position.
Did you reach out to him? Or
Who
did
was
he
the
reach
advisor
out
that
to
gave that
you?
bad advice?
Was the position created because Damon lost the election and was now out of work?
That's what it looks like.
Yeah.
That's what
He wasn't out of work, so I mean, he was at a firm.
But he lost
He was
the
at a law
election
firm. He
thanks
did
to
lose
this
the election.
community because
Yeah.
we don't want him anywhere near us.
I hear
There's
you, and on this one especially, I really just want to listen. So
You know
Well,
what?
you need to know.
Does-
something.
hold on.
Why? I'm just curious.
Listening
Why
isn't enough.
didn't
He
he
needs
go
to
through the
not be
process or
hired.
be
But
vetted or have the application process? If you went through the search for the real time crime guy, why didn't you take those steps with Mr. Martinez?
we went through interviews and things like that, but I think we have been unsure about how to get. So the context for the position, let me give you, is that as we go through DOJ reform, now that we're sort of cooperating and making a lot of progress, it will take as many people as could possibly be absorbed or will be sort of pulled into working on DOJ reform. And that's a good thing. Like, we want to devote a lot of resources to that effort. But what we find is there's other things that need to be fixed in the department, right? No one here is going to disagree with that. And so as we had other issues that came up, like, for example, the Crimes Against Children unit and some of the shortcomings that have happened there, and then, there had been a 2014 task force about recommendations for that department. No one had really followed up on that. We just really felt like we needed someone who was not related to the DOJ process.
Damon has no experience or background in policy. That's not his background.
Well, he was the U.S. attorney. I mean, that's not policymaking.
Yeah.
That's not a
He was
policy.
very related to the DOJ.
I mean, I understand. You asked me about the position.
Yeah,
I'm
no,
explaining
I'm curious
the answer. So that is why we felt that. So we were just really looking for someone who would have the skill set and the resources and not be dragged in to the DOJ work.
So
he
you
is
reached out to
DOJ.
him.
I think he reached out to us, but I don't remember. Yeah.
To brand us again.
That's a point to
hire someone-
clarify.
So I have a
Discriminate
concern
against black and brown.
My concern is this. I am a huge supporter of Mayor Tim Keller. I worked super hard. I'm the chair of a ward in Albuquerque. I motivated a lot of people. I helped get a lot of work out. And when he said, I won't raise taxes without a referendum, fine with me. Then he says, I need to raise taxes, or really it started with city council, but whatever, we got more money to make the city safer. Because we're gonna do community policing, because we're gonna work in your community. We're not gonna target people. That was the implicit what I heard from him. If you had told me when he signed that and when that was passed, that it was gonna include 3 hires of $6-figure salaries, who were, by the way, all men, 2 of them questionable, 1 so bad Damon Martinez, that I also worked hard because of Celinda's education and everybody telling, do you know what this guy did to our community? And if we hadn't worked hard, I think it would have been that we would be running for the CD1. This is heartbreaking to me on these levels, but also on the level of he went back on a campaign promise to raise money. I know that happens. I'm not stupid. I know sometimes you go into a situation, you need more money. I'm all for that. Oh, it's going to make our city safer. How is it going to make it safer? By hiring the guy who targeted our black and brown people? No. I back off from that. I am offended. I am disappointed. I am heartbroken. And I believe in my heart that he doesn't understand.
Yeah.
Because I don't think that's who he is. I don't think that's how you are. I don't think that's who his administration is. But this man that they gave a 6-figure, to people in this community, 6 figures is a lot of money. It's not nothing.
Yes.
This is
We
in
have
New
to
York.
work 2
That's
and
a lot
3
of money. They're
jobs
giving it
just
to this guy.
Pay our rent around here. So like this is just
who has
obscene.
Shown who he is very clearly. I mean, to people who study the facts. Yeah, I've been at his parties where he's friendly and nice and he's the schmoozer. I get that. But let's look at what he's done. And to have him in a leadership position with ABT, I just think is a huge misstep.
So I'd just like to. They have to come here. Did at any point in time, did it enter your brain during this hiring frenzy to go, just so we don't really mess up, this is what we're thinking. This is what we're going to do. These are the people that we're kind of leaning to, so that you could get some type of bearing, because it looks like you were blindfolded and your foot was super glued to the accelerator and you just ran into a big wall.
I'll take that criticism. Yeah, I mean, I don't know any other department that works with the, like I sometimes it feels like in APD everything we do goes through like 58 layers of community process, but because of the DOJ, and that's a good thing, but you're right, we did not do that with these hires.
Okay.
Absolutely right.
It's not too late.
So they said something.
But that's why, that's why we're here, and that's why I know somebody yelled at me when I said I'm here to listen, but like I really, that's like, we're here now, and I'm here to listen, so.
I'd just like to add some basic facts.
So, I'm sorry, I don't wanna hear from all of you, and so some of you are talking over each other, and it's just a little hard for me to hear, so.
We have trauma. I'm sorry, you're feeling our emotion.
I get it.
So just some basic facts about Damon Martinez as U.S. Attorney. One, this is a policy-making position. As U.S. Attorney, he did not create any policies, nor was he innovative in ways to prevent crime in New Mexico. Crime actually raised in New Mexico while he was the U.S. Attorney, and more people of color were incarcerated because he agreed to federalize state crimes, thereby allowing harsher sentences to be inflicted on people so they could be warehoused. That's a fact. That's not somebody saying this is a bad thing. That's a fact. And as somebody who works for our city now, it's really hard to trust somebody who supported that. He does not inspire or connect with people. When he was U.S. Attorney, being approached about things like this, nope, this is just the way it's got to be because we've got too much crime. Well, my fear is that he's going to take that same thought process and apply it to his policy making at the city level.
Can I just ask a little procedural question before we move on? Would anybody who's recording be willing to share this with us just so I can share it with the mayor or whatever? Okay, because otherwise I know Michelle's taking notes and Alan's taking notes, but I want to.
Yes,
it's going to be hard for me to capture and relay all this. So even if it's just audio or whatever, I would. Really
I can email it to you tomorrow.
Okay.
So and the second thing is during the sting operation, he was called on it, saying, "Look, you're not getting any big time drug dealers here. You're getting really small time people, many of whom hadn't had any convictions in a long time. You're manufacturing crime to make this happen." Well, instead of sitting back and saying, let's bring some people to the table, see what's happening, let's talk to those communities that it's impacting, he didn't. He doubled down on it. Nope, we're going to go out and we're going to hit these communities twice as hard. because we are arresting and convicting lots of people, and that's what we need to do. Doesn't matter what kind of people, but we're arresting and convicting people. To me, that's unacceptable. You know?
And unethical.
Absolutely.
And I
that should go without saying.
I heard him say out of his mouth, he laughed and called my community fish in a barrel, and he joked about how easy it was to make mass arrests.
You've mentioned that just so I know where that was.
Well, I know that he said it more than once, but he was having a conversation with people that he thought were his friends, who allowed me to hear it. He has many enemies in this community, and for good reason, because he is unethical, because he is a racist, because he does not stand with us and he cannot represent us. That's why he didn't win the CD1 race. People understood that narrative. They understood who he was, and they did not vote for him. So how could Tim put him in a position after he lost to represent our community that rejected him?
There was a couple hands over here.
I just want to kind of reiterate what this lady had to say as well. And a little bit of flack from some of my friends over the idea of voting for Tim Keller. They told me that now he's not really who you think he is, and I'm like, well, no, I think I can trust it. I think, and in fact, I even told him one day in April, you know, I nearly broke down and told him, I feel like you're it. You're the last hope. I don't have a lot anymore, and you're it. So, me and many others are on very, very, very thin ice. And this doesn't work right. And I'll tell you another thing from a sort of like a political standpoint, because I wasn't as intimately involved with the things that many of these people know very well about occurrences during his time as U.S. Attorney. But I watched his campaign, and he had the audacity to do something in the waning week of that campaign, which was to slap the word progressive all over his TV commercials. The most conservative candidate for Congress of all 8 of them that were running.
That was so
he
weird.
had the audacity to slap progressive. What that means is that is an individual who will do anything and say anything to acquire power. That is the last thing you want in such a sensitive position at such a sensitive time going on. And if Tim is willing to bring that into his house,
what isn't he really
done? Yeah, I mean, this has already been, you know, the vote was a referendum. I mean, even though he was calling himself progressive, he was also basically aligning with law and order policies, you know, hard line, you know, policies that are proven time and time again, especially in communities with a makeup like Albuquerque, not to work at all. I mean, from big cities to small cities, the cities that are making progress with crime and substance disorders and addictions and are the ones that are actually going and reaching out to the most vulnerable in the communities and finding new ways to, you know, work as a police force instead of as, you know, just, you know, taking a club to everyone. It's a more humane way, and Damon Martinez has time and time again, you know, said that, you know, from things from stop and frisk and, you know, just wholesale arrests and neighbor, you know, it's back to the policies of New York City in the, you know, 70s and 80s. It doesn't work.
So my first experience with Damon Martinez was at a CPC meeting up in the Heights, up at Domingo Baca Community Center, whatever that place is called. he was invited to do a presentation as the U.S. attorney about what he was doing as the U.S. attorney. He spent an hour and a half, at least an hour and a half, talking about what he was going to do about heroin. And in the context of that, he admitted he had a family member who died of a drug overdose. This seems to drive his own personal agenda toward drugs. And whatever it is that he is doing, he has a blind spot about addiction and what the impacts are and how the community should be responding. And he is using his personal problem about losing a family member and creating these kind of policies and bringing these kind of behaviors into our community. And this is a policy. This is the kind of thing that leads to policies. This is problematic. He has a personal issue about addiction. I do not know the background. I don't know more about it. I believe it has to do with somebody who lived in Espanola or Rio Riva, where he came from. I don't know, but it is a blind spot, and it is problematic that he is going to be making policies with a personal background that does not allow him to understand the problems that we are facing in the community. And he is going to go his way to solve that problem based out of some personal issue that he has. It's wrong. He went on and on and on. It was the worst presentation I have ever heard from a public official. I really think ever from any public official is at that meeting. It was relentless, it was stupid, and it was a waste of time. And you gotta figure out how to get rid of him. Because we will not, you will not be rid of us as long as he is working.
As long as he is here.
We will not relent.
I won't vote for him.
I just wanted to say real quick, I don't really have any factual kind of thing to add, but what you said really, because I voted for Tim, I campaigned for Tim, I did phone banking for Tim, even my husband came with me, or in fact our car got wrecked the night that he won the election. There's great hope. And I have thought about it over this time. That's a lot to put on someone's shoulder. But I feel like he's a person that could listen to this. I think there's such substance to this. I think it's really important. I think a real mistake has been made in hiring Damon Martinez. I will grant you on the other guy, I think people can learn, and he may bring something with him of value. That remains to be seen. But with Damon Martinez, we've seen it. It's fresh.
The wounds are fresh.
Yes. Okay. Let's talk about this Damon Martinez. You guys put him in this position that he has access to the policies of APD. Okay. How do we not know that he will follow them? He didn't follow them when he was. What makes you think he's gonna follow them now? Like everything he's done, he's gonna do whatever he wants to do, and nobody can tell him different. And he's showed that. He's showed that in everything he's done. And I'm hoping that Mr. Keller will change what he's doing and really look into the people that he's hiring, because these people that he's hired have targeted our community, and those people that Damien targeted were some of my friends and family. I mean, and they're deeply affected by it.
Many are 20 years to life in prison. Right now, they're fighting for their lives.
And some of these people were people who were living in halfway houses.
Or their car.
And that he sent people in there and enticed them. Call up your old drug buddies. I need to score some meth. And this went on, and there was, you need to read what Jeff Proctor has written about this. He did a whole series about Damon Steen. And, you know, it's shocking what the lengths that they went to get people who weren't even, I mean, at this point where had come out of prison and trying to turn their lives around, now they're back in for who knows how long. It's a crime. This is a crime, what he did to this community.
He should be in
And
prison.
Barb
He's the
was
one that
right.
should have
You need
been-
to get rid of him tomorrow morning. He should be called up and told you're not welcome to return to the city of
Because
Albuquerque.
it's not just the people in jail, it's all their families.
To this situation, I would like to speak to the one lady that was involved in this situation. Out of this sting, there was one lady that was caught up. I met the lady in my former job. I'm the one who got her the job where they tricked her off at. It wasn't until I was in a meeting with the city councilman and he was trying to get DOJ, Damien, and them to come. And I met her mother. To find out that she was the one. Because when I kept reading it, it wasn't connecting to me what they was talking about. Until we was at the meeting and he talking about the young lady that was working at Buckethead and was in a halfway house. And I'm the one who had put her at Buckethead. And so I had just about a few days before this took place, she had just gotten out of prison. She had just gotten out of prison, had just got back with her children. And he sicked his dog on this young lady. I never could understand how he was allowed to go hire some fellows from another state to bring them here to set up these people. And as Serena said, most of them was homeless. They was not the worst of the worst.
So
I wanna make
I
one
think
very
you had
quick
your
point.
hands up, you, and then I just want to make sure I hear from everybody, you sir too. So let's
Just
go.
2 sentences.
Mhm.
If you are willing to not hire your potential city clerk candidate because she owes some taxes, how in the hell can you hire Damon Martinez after all that you heard?
We were
about
willing to
all
go to
this?
battle for our city clerk candidate. She withdrew.
I know her.
Because
She's a very confident
this
and
kind of
able
thing
person.
happened with
No,
other
I
people,
know.
so,
I
yeah.
But
know
we're
she- I
saying
know
that
her.
these people are more problematic than that.
No, I just wanted to let you know, like, I was willing to go to bat for Charlotte and for
But I'm
everybody who
just
has
saying
bad
that
credit
if
in this
that's a
state.
measure
But
that'll
yeah.
kill you from a position like that, then the story you just heard here.
I hear you. I just want to make
way
clear
beyond
it
that.
didn't with Charlotte. Like,
I hate hearing you say that. I hate hearing you say, I'm listening. I hear that. That's empty words. What's your action?
Fire him.
Go ahead, Justin.
I just, I have a real problem with what you're doing. I mean, you're telling us how it's gonna be, and I spent a good majority of my adult life in prison behind things like this. I don't approve of Damon Martinez being in our city because some of my friends are still inside of those walls because of things like this. I mean,
Take your time. Take your time.
This is not right. I mean, you need to get rid of him. I'm telling you, you need to get rid of him.
He's predatory.
I want to share, I can't prove it, but the very night before Damon got his big money from out of state on his campaign, I had been rallying against him for almost, since he had announced, I had been rallying against him. I was probably the most outspoken. The night before he got his big money from out of state and started his media campaign here, weeks out from the election, my house was shot up with an AR. APD took 20 minutes to come to my house. I ran through my house throwing my children on the floor. They unloaded an entire clip into the front of my house. And when APD showed up, they said, who are your enemies in the community? I said, Damon Martinez and the federal government. I have no enemies in this community.
And she lives in Nob Hill.
I have a community house. I feed people out of my house. The young people from New Day came to my house the next day and they said, Celinda, who would do this? You have a house of love. Nobody in the community would do this to you. I know it wasn't the community. I know that Damon Martinez sent CIs to shoot up my house, to silence me, because he was trying to keep power and win an election.
20 minutes.
I believe that.
20 minutes to show up to a house in Nob Hill is
walls.
non-existent. That doesn't happen.
5 minutes away from the substation.
As a member of the community, I want to know what you guys will guarantee us as a community that he won't do what he's done before. Like, how can you make us feel safe that this guy is not going to do what he did before to the black and brown community? And he's hurt us. He's literally hurt us, not like emotionally, physically. And like, how can you guys as an administration guarantee us that we're gonna be okay? Because I don't hear nothing. I don't hear that we're gonna be okay with this man being in the position he's in, because he has access to them policies and he's gonna do whatever he wants.
So I just want to say that I appreciate this meeting, but I also know this meeting is to pacify the community, and so that's disheartening. And then I also want to say this is probably the first time you'll ever see the community in alignment with the police union. And so not only are we outcrying against Damon Martinez, the police union is saying that. So I would love to meet with the police union so we can come together as one, so we can make sure that this hire is out, because it seems like you're going to continue to have these people in these positions, and as community, we're going to have to organize and fight. And I know why you're in the position you're in, because you're really good at your job, but we're also good at ours. And so we're going to have to organize to actually fight to get, I know at least Martinez out, because there's plenty of facts. I don't know if we have enough facts on other people, but for Martinez, there's clear factual evidence what he has done to target our vulnerable populations. Many of those people come from the community that I grew up with as well. And so, but that doesn't matter, because he targeted black and brown communities, and I don't believe or trust him. And I've actually had a conversation with Damon Martinez about what he's done. And so I even appreciated that time, because I needed to voice my, and so I appreciate this time for people to voice their concerns. But this meeting is just to pacify us, which is disheartening.
I know, and you're having another one with APD Forward tomorrow. And I know that many others have reached out to you for meetings, and I know that you're doing these series of meetings. And that is just more layers of trauma and harm. And I hope that Tim understands that. We hope that you are taking our voices seriously. We all are away from our families tonight. We haven't had dinner yet, and we had 2 hours notice, and we showed up here because it means that much. This man cannot hold power in APD or anywhere else in this city. He has harmed us.
And that's hearing us, is making sure that he's no longer in that position. That's what's called hearing us is taking our voices to action. And I did hear you. I want to say this. I heard you. I do understand the Nebetsky, or whatever the name is, from Jersey. I understand, and I didn't understand that anything else I read. So I appreciate understanding your point of view. Your point of view, if I could summarize it, is, yes, he may have had an issue in the past. All of us feel that just because he wasn't ever found by his own department, a problem isn't a problem. But okay, forget that part. Let me just finish. But that he went through a process of change within a department, and that's valuable, because we need to change. And so I hear that's what you're saying you see in him. So I didn't hear that. I didn't know that when I walked in, and I hear it now, and I appreciate, of course, I want to make sure we have safeguards in place. And it's tricky because he's a data guy, and data guys are hard to watch. I'm a data person. So I think that I would offer, or somehow I'd like to have some monitoring, if I may, and I would volunteer for that. I want someone to be watching what's going on, because that's a very sensitive position, how you manage data. But I understand now that there was an understanding that he might bring something to the table that would be helpful, and I appreciate that. I did hear you. I'm hoping that you heard us about Damon Martinez.
Go ahead, Eric.
I would actually follow up on what Meta said earlier, and also others hadn't had dinner. Also, but actually, you may be aware this is an election coming up. I'm looking around the room and thinking there are a whole lot of volunteer hours not happening right now because of who these people are.
Getting the vote out.
That's all, I was slated to be making calls for Michelle as it happens tonight, but like I think almost all of us are working every
some
night.
get the
all
vote
the
out
time.
activity.
We're trying to get and then that reminded me that I look around the room and I can count at least 4 or 5 people who I met for the first time at Tim's campaign headquarters that are in this room with me right now. And so I hope he appreciates who it is that's sitting here. And then I'll just throw this unrelated, but because it's a thing that I've been thinking as everybody else spoke about Damon, that and the emotion in this room, in part is because these are fresh wounds. There are bleeding hearts in this room over what happened. This isn't something from decades ago. And I think that's important because we frankly